The snow fell in thick sheets across 442B, covering everything in white silence. Stood at the edge of the mining platform, watching the sky through her thermal visor. She had been a geological surveyor for 3 years now, mapping ice caves and mineral deposits on this frozen world at the edge of human space. It was quiet work, lonely work. She liked it that way. The colony behind her held 200 souls. Miners, engineers, families who had come seeking fortune in the ice. They lived in heated domes connected by tunnels, a small spot of warmth in an endless cold desert. Knew every tunnel, every cave, every crack in the ice for 50 kilometers in any direction. The land had become her home in ways the colony never quite managed. She noticed the ships before anyone else did. 3 dark shapes dropping through the clouds, too fast, too controlled to be meteors. They moved like predators circling prey, lowered her visor and watched with calm eyes. The alarm started screaming 30 seconds later. Found her still standing there when he ran out onto the platform. He was the colony's security chief, a former Marine with gray at his temples and old scars on his hands. He grabbed her shoulder and pulled. "We need to get inside, now." "They already cut our communications," she said. Her voice was flat, observational. 14 minutes ago, I noticed the static." Stared at her. "What?" "They were jamming us before they even entered atmosphere. This isn't random. They planned this." The ships landed in a triangle around the colony, close enough that their engine heat melted the snow into steam. Watched the ramps lower. What came out made reach for his sidearm. They were tall, 8 feet at least, with 6 limbs and bodies covered in dark, armored plates. Their heads were flat and wide, filled with eyes that glowed faint red in the cold air. They moved with the easy grace of creatures who had never known fear, never known challenge. Apex predators, the top of whatever food chain they came from. There were 40 of them. They spread out in a perfect hunting formation without any visible signals, surrounding the colony in minutes. One stepped forward, larger than the others, with deeper red eyes and scars across its chest plate. It opened its mouth and spoke in broken, mechanical human words. Someone had given them translation technology. Someone had told them about this colony. "I am pack leader. Your species is unknown to us. This is good. Fresh prey makes the hunt worthy." The creature's mouth twisted into something like a smile. "We claim this world under the right of the hunt. You will run. We will chase. Those who survive will serve. Those who fall will become trophies." It paused, letting the words sink in. Inside the colony could hear screaming, families grabbing children, workers scrambling for weapons that wouldn't help. "You have 1 hour to prepare. Then the hunt begins. Run well, little prey, die with honor." The creatures turned and walked back toward their ships, leaving the colonists in stunned terror. His hand was shaking on his weapon. He had fought pirates. He had fought desperate men with nothing to lose. He had never faced anything like this. "We need to evacuate into the tunnels," he said. "Get everyone underground. Maybe we can hold them off until—" "Until what?" His voice cut through his planning. "No one is coming. They jammed us. No distress signal, no rescue. We're alone." "Then what do you suggest?" Finally turned to look at him. Her eyes were calm in a way that made uncomfortable, not the calm of acceptance. Something else, something older. "I suggest we stop thinking like prey." She walked past him toward the colony entrance. Followed, his mind racing. Inside, chaos ruled. People were crying, arguing, some already trying to pack supplies for a desperate flight into the ice. The chief engineer was shouting orders that no one was following. Her dark hair was wild, her hands covered in grease from whatever project she had abandoned when the ships arrived. "Push through the crowd. Please tell me you have a plan. Please tell me you see something I don't. How many mining charges do we have?" "Blink to what?" "Mining charges, explosives, how many?" "I don't know, maybe 200 units. We use them for ice excavation. But those things out there have armor. Our charges won't." I don't want to blow them up. His voice was patient, like a teacher explaining something simple. I want to shape the battlefield. How well do you know the tunnel system? Better than anyone except you. Good, start rigging charges at these points. Pulled out her mapping tablet and began marking locations. Don't arm them yet, just place them, and make them loud. I want them to feel the ground shake. Stared at the map, then at a small light came into her eyes. Not hope, not yet, but something close to it. What are you planning? They think they're hunting prey. They have rules for hunting prey. Every predator does. Looked toward the windows, toward the alien ships sitting in the snow. But humans aren't prey, we never were. We just let them think that. Organize the colonists into groups. Fighters, runners, wounded. The colony's medic set up a medical station in the deepest tunnel section. She was a small woman with steady hands and a voice that could calm anyone. She had already started treating shock in 3 people and a broken arm from the panic. A young maintenance worker, barely 20 years old, attached himself to like a shadow. He was terrified. She could see it in his shaking hands, but he refused to leave her side. What can I do? He asked. Please, I need to do something. Studied him. Can you move quietly? I think so. Can you follow orders without asking questions? He swallowed hard. Yes. Good, stay close. Watch, learn. The hour passed faster than anyone wanted. The colonists who could fight had armed themselves with mining tools, industrial cutters, anything with an edge or a point, had distributed the few actual weapons they had. It wasn't much. It wouldn't be enough. Everyone knew it. The pack leader's voice echoed across the colony through some kind of speaker system they had set up. The hour ends. The hunt begins. Run, little prey. Give us good sport. The aliens began advancing. Their movements were coordinated, spreading out to cover all escape routes. They expected the humans to scatter. They expected panic and fear and the sweet chase of terrified prey. Walked out onto the snow. She stood alone in the white emptiness, facing the advancing hunters. The pack leader saw her and stopped, his head tilted to one side, curious. One comes forward. You wish to bargain, to beg? No. Then what? Looked at him with those calm, unsettling eyes. I wanted to see what you looked like, the creatures who came so far to play games. The pack leader laughed. It was an ugly sound. You are brave, little prey, I claim you. You will be my personal quarry. He gestured with one of his upper limbs. I give you 1 hour head start. Run far, make it interesting. Didn't run. She turned and walked slowly toward the abandoned mining tunnels at the colony's edge. Before she disappeared into the darkness, she looked back over her shoulder. She was smiling. The pack leader felt something strange, a small cold feeling in his chest that he didn't recognize. His species had hunted across 17 star systems. They had conquered races that fought back with technology and races that surrendered without hope. Never once had prey looked at him like that. Like he was the one being measured. He shook off the feeling and signaled his hunters forward. The hunt had begun. Whatever strange game this human thought she was playing, it would end the same way they all ended. In the tunnels, smile faded into focus. She pulled out her mapping tablet and checked progress. The charges were almost in place. Was waiting for her at the first junction, pale but ready. They're coming, he whispered. Yes, began walking deeper into the darkness. Let them come. The hunt had begun, but not the one they expected. The tunnels beneath 442B ran for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. The mining company had spent decades carving them out, following veins of precious minerals through the ice and rock. Most were abandoned now, too deep or too dangerous to work. Knew them all. She moved through the darkness with close behind. The young man had stopped shaking, but his breathing was still too fast, too loud. She paused at a junction and held up her hand. Slower breaths, she said quietly. They can hear your heartbeat if you let it race. How do you know that? Because that's what I would use if I were hunting in the dark. Tried to slow his breathing. It was hard when every shadow seemed to hold teeth and claws. Where are we going? We're not going anywhere. We're leading them somewhere. Checked her tablet. The tunnel maps glowed soft blue in the darkness. They use thermal vision. They see heat. It's their biggest advantage in the dark. So we can't hide from them. No, but we can blind them. She pointed at the map. 3 kilometers ahead, there's a geothermal vent system. The ground temperature varies by 40 degrees in patches. To their eyes, it will look like fire everywhere. They kept moving. Behind them, somewhere in the darkness, the hunters followed. Could feel them, the same way she used to feel wolves in the mountains back on Earth. Her grandmother had taught her to hunt boar in the forests of Provence. The old woman had been hard, practical, full of knowledge passed down through generations of people who lived close to the land. Fear is useful, her grandmother used to say, but panic is death. Know the difference. Knew the difference. The first hunter caught up to them 2 hours into the tunnels. Heard him before she saw him, the soft click of claws on stone, the whisper of armored plates shifting. She pushed into a side passage and pressed herself against the cold wall. The hunter passed within 3 meters of them. He was massive up close, all muscle and armor and predator efficiency. His head swept back and forth, thermal eyes scanning the darkness. He saw his heat signature hiding in the passage. The smiled, he had found prey. He lunged into the passage, claws extended, and screamed as the mining spike had hidden in the ceiling dropped through his shoulder joint, pinning him to the ground. The armor was thick on his chest and back, but the joints had to be flexible. Joints were always weak points. Stepped out of the shadows as the hunter thrashed and roared. She didn't attack him again. She just watched. You should have checked for traps, she said calmly. Your species you see so well in the dark, but you don't look up. Prey animals never come from above, do they? The hunter spat something in his own language. His translator crackled. When I get free, I will tear you apart slowly. You won't get free, that spike is barbed. The more you struggle, the deeper it goes. Crouched down to his level, staying just out of reach. I'm going to leave you here. Your pack brothers will find you in a few hours. By then, the cold will have done its work. You'll live, but you'll never hunt again. She stood and gestured too. Let's go. They left the hunter screaming in the darkness. Was pale, his hands shaking again, but there was something new in his eyes. Not hope, understanding. You planned that, he said as they walked. You knew he would follow. I knew someone would follow. They're hunters. Hunters follow trails. Marked the location on her tablet. Now his pack brothers will have to choose. Rescue him and lose time, or leave him and lose strength. Either way, I win something. 3 kilometers later, they reached the geothermal vents. The air here was warm and thick with minerals, and the ground pulsed with heat from deep below. Guided through the maze of hot and cold patches, teaching him to read the temperature changes through his boots. Step where I step, exactly where I step. They crossed the vent field and set up position on the far side. Had gathered loose rocks while she prepared more traps. Simple things, trip lines, falling debris, narrow passages that would force the hunters to squeeze through one at a time. They're stronger than us, she explained as she worked. Faster, better armed, but they're built for open hunting, chase and kill. They're not built for this. For what? Patience. She told him about humans then, about how their ancestors had hunted on the plains of Africa, not with speed or strength, but with endurance. How humans could run longer than any animal on Earth, could track prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. How they had killed mammoths and cave bears and saber-toothed cats, not through superior power, but through superior persistence. Every predator in the galaxy thinks strength is everything, said. They're wrong. Strength matters in one moment. Patience matters in every moment after. The hunters reached the geothermal field an hour later. There were 4 of them now, working together, communicating through clicks and gestures. They had found their wounded brother and left him behind, a hard choice that told something about their priorities. The hunt mattered more than the individual. She watched from across the vent field as they entered the heat maze. Their thermal vision, their greatest tool, became their greatest weakness. The temperature variations turned the world into a chaos of bright and dark patches. They couldn't see the cold bodies of the humans hiding in the shadows. They couldn't see the traps. The first hunter stepped on a pressure plate and sent a cascade of loose rocks onto his head. Not enough to kill through that armor, but enough to stun, to slow, to make him stumble into a hot zone that seared his sensitive eye membranes. He screamed and fell back, half blind. The second hunter tried to help his brother and walked straight into a trip line. He fell forward onto a cluster of sharpened mining stakes that had placed earlier. The armor held on his chest, but the stakes found the gaps in his leg joints. He went down, crippled. The remaining two hunters stopped. They had entered the field expecting easy tracking, easy prey. In 5 minutes, half their group was disabled. They clicked furiously at each other, trying to understand what was happening. Watch from the darkness. She had been here for 6 hours now. She had eaten a small meal, drunk water, rested when she could. She was tired but controlled. The hunters hadn't rested at all. They had pushed forward constantly, driven by instinct and pride. "They're learning," whispered. "They're being more careful." Yes, but they're also getting tired. And angry. Angry hunters make mistakes. She was right. One of the remaining hunters lost patience and charged across the vent field, trying to close the distance through pure speed. He made it halfway before his foot broke through a thin ice crust and plunged into boiling water beneath. His scream echoed through the tunnels for a long time. The last hunter stood alone in the maze of heat and cold. He was the of the group, the most careful. He looked around at his fallen brothers, at the traps he could now see everywhere, at the impossible situation he had walked into. Then he looked across the field and saw standing in the open, watching him. She had moved from her hiding spot. She wanted him to see her. "You're alone now," she said, her voice carrying in the mineral-thick air. "You can try to finish the hunt, or you can carry your brothers back to your ships and tell your pack leader what you found." The hunter stared at her. His translator crackled with his response. "What are you?" "I'm human," smiled that calm, terrible smile. "We don't run." The hunter made his choice. He gathered his wounded brothers, those who could still move, and began the long retreat back through the tunnels. He didn't look back. Let out a breath he had been holding for what felt like hours. "We won. We actually won. We won this part." Was already moving, checking her tablet, planning the next phase. There are still 35 hunters up there, and their pack leader won't make the same mistakes. Then what do we do? Looked at him with calm, ancient eyes. Eyes that held knowledge of 100,000 years of human survival against every predator the universe had thrown at them. "We do what humans have always done. We keep going, we adapt, we make them afraid." In the tunnels behind them, the wounded hunter dragged himself through the darkness. His shoulder burned where the spike had torn through. His pride burned worse. In all his years of hunting, across a dozen worlds, he had never felt what he felt now. He had been tracked, followed, watched. He was prey. And somewhere in the darkness, the human was still out there, waiting, patient. The hunt was far from over. 3 days had passed since the hunt began. In the colony's lower levels, the survivors waited in tense silence, moved between them, checking wounds, calming fears, keeping people alive in body and spirit. She had not slept more than 2 hours at a stretch since the aliens arrived. Stood at the main junction, watching the tunnel that led up toward the surface. He had 30 armed colonists with him, all volunteers, all terrified. They had mining tools and industrial equipment converted into weapons. It wasn't much, but it was something. "Report from Tunnel 7, said, emerging from a side passage. Her face was streaked with dirt and dried blood from a cut on her forehead. "The charges are ready. I've rigged the whole network. One signal and I can bring down any section you want. Entrap ourselves underground. Or trap them with us." Eyes were hard. She had lost friends in the first day when some colonists had tried to surrender. They had killed them anyway, calling it poor sport. She wasn't interested in surrender anymore. Above ground, they were suffering. The pack leader stood in his command ship, receiving reports from hunters who had entered the tunnels and emerged broken. 8 dead now. 12 wounded badly enough to be removed from the hunt, and they had yet to kill a single human. "Explain this to me," he growled at his surviving captains. "We have hunted species with greater technology. We have hunted species with natural weapons that could tear us apart. How are these soft, fragile creatures destroying us?" No one answered. They had no answers to give. "They don't fight," one captain finally said. "They don't confront us. They disappear and reappear. They set traps in places we cannot see. They know the ground better than we do. Then burn the ground, collapse the tunnels, smoke them out. We tried. The tunnel system is too extensive, and they have rigged explosives throughout. If we push too hard, they bring the ceiling down on our heads." The pack leader slammed his fist against the wall, leaving a dent in the metal. This was supposed to be simple. A new species, soft and untested, ripe for harvest. Instead, it had become a nightmare. His status was crumbling with every failed report. Hunters were beginning to whisper about retreat. He could not retreat. Retreat meant exile, death. Everything he had built across 40 years of hunting would vanish. "I will go myself," he said. "Gather the best 20 hunters. We end this today." Deep in the tunnels, received word from who had been watching the surface with a cracked thermal scope. "They're massing. Looks like a big push coming." She nodded and checked her tablet. 3 days of running, fighting, trapping. 3 days of no sleep, little food, constant movement. Her body ached in places she had forgotten existed, but her mind was clear. It had always been clear in moments like this. "Signal, tell him it's time." The message went out through a relay of runners. No radio, no electronics that they could intercept. Just people moving through the darkness, carrying words. An ancient method of communication that the aliens had never considered. Received the signal and turned to his fighters. "They're coming, big group, this is it." The colonists gripped their weapons. Some were shaking, some were crying, but none of them ran. 3 days of watching and the others fight back had changed something in them. They were still afraid, but they were also angry, and angry humans were dangerous humans. They entered the tunnels like a wave of death. 20 of the best hunters, led by the pack leader himself. They moved in perfect formation, covering each other, checking for traps. They had learned from their fallen brothers. They would not make the same mistakes. But had not been teaching them about traps. She had been teaching them about fear. The first attack came from behind. 3 colonists with industrial cutters emerged from a hidden passage and struck at the rear guard before vanishing back into the darkness. 2 hunters went down with severed leg tendons. The pack leader spun, roaring orders, but there was nothing to fight. Only shadows and echoes. The second attack came from above. Mining charges detonated in a controlled sequence, not to kill, but to separate. The tunnel collapsed in sections, splitting the hunting party into 3 groups. The pack leader found himself cut off from half his forces. "Forward," he commanded, "push through." They pushed, and they found waiting. The colonists had built a barricade across the main tunnel, using mining equipment and ice blocks. It wasn't strong, wouldn't hold against a sustained assault, but it didn't need to hold. It just needed to slow them down. The charged people met them with everything they had. Mining picks against claws, industrial torches against armored hides, human determination against alien strength. It should have been a massacre. They were faster, stronger, better equipped, but the colonists fought together in ways the hunters couldn't understand. When one fell, another stepped forward to cover them. When one weakened, others supported them. They moved as a single organism, a pack species facing predators. Took a claw across his side, a wound that would have killed a smaller man. He didn't fall. He grabbed the hunter's arm and held on while drove a mining spike through its eye socket. The creature dropped and kept fighting, blood soaking his clothes. "Hold the line," he roared. "Hold them here." The pack leader pushed through his own forces, determined to break the barricade himself. He was the strongest, the fastest, the deadliest. He had killed 1,000 prey animals across a dozen worlds. These humans would be no different. He smashed through the barricade like it was paper, scattering colonists left and right. His claws found flesh, drew blood, ended lives. For a moment, it seemed like the hunt would end as all hunts ended, in the victory of the superior predator. Then appeared. She stepped out of a side tunnel, alone, unarmed except for a small mining pick. Her clothes were torn, her skin covered in cuts and bruises. She looked like she should collapse at any moment. But her eyes were calm, focused, utterly without fear. "Pack leader," she said, "I've been waiting for you." The pack leader laughed. "You, the one who has been playing in the shadows, you think you can face me directly. I think you've been hunting the wrong prey." She moved before he could respond, darting to the side, using the fallen debris as cover. The pack leader lunged after her, his superior speed closing the distance in seconds. His claws slashed through the air where she had been, but she wasn't there anymore. She was behind him. The mining pick found the joint between his shoulder plates, driving deep into muscle and nerve. He roared and spun, but she was already gone, slipping through the debris like water through rocks. Again and again she struck. Never a killing blow, she wasn't strong enough for that. But she didn't need to kill. She needed to bleed. She needed to tire. She needed to make him angry enough to make mistakes. "Stand still," he bellowed. "Face me." "Why?" His voice came from somewhere in the darkness. "You're a hunter, hunt me." He tried. For 10 minutes he chased her through the tunnel junction, getting more and more frustrated, more and more exhausted. His wounds weren't serious individually, but together they drained him. The cold air burned his lungs. His muscles began to cramp. And still she kept moving, still she kept striking, still she refused to fall. "What are you?" he gasped, finally stopping to catch his breath. "What kind of creature fights like this?" Stepped out of the shadows, close enough to see but too far to reach. She was breathing hard too, her body pushed to its limits, but she was still standing, still fighting. "On my world," she said, "there were creatures called mammoths, huge animals 10 times my size. My ancestors hunted them, not with strength, not with speed. They would follow a mammoth for days, keeping it moving, never letting it rest. Eventually, the mammoth would collapse from exhaustion, and my ancestors would walk up and kill it with simple weapons." She raised her mining pick. "We are humans. We are the species that hunted everything on our world to extinction, not because we were the strongest, because we never ever stopped." The pack leader looked at her. For the first time in his long life, he understood something terrible. He was not facing prey. He was facing a predator that had learned to wear prey's clothing. And he was alone, wounded, far from his ships, surrounded by creatures who would not stop coming. The colonists had regrouped during the fight. They surrounded him now, 30 humans with blood on their hands and fire in their eyes. They weren't attacking. They were waiting. Waiting for it to finish. "You can die here," she said quietly. "Or you can take your hunters and leave this world. Tell your people what you found. Tell them about the species that broke the hunt." The pack leader's pride screamed at him to fight, to die with honor rather than retreat in shame. But something stronger spoke too, something ancient, something that recognized a superior predator when it saw one. "This is not over," he growled. "No," agreed, "it's just beginning." She stepped aside, opening a path back toward the surface. The pack leader gathered his surviving hunters, fewer than a dozen now, and began the long retreat. His status was destroyed, his reputation ruined, but he was alive. And as he climbed back toward the surface, he couldn't shake one thought from his mind. She had let him go. She could have killed him, could have finished it, but she chose mercy instead. That terrified him more than anything else. The pack leader did not leave. He could not leave. Retreat was death in society, a slow death of shame and exile that was worse than any wound. He gathered his remaining hunters in the command ship and tried to understand what had gone wrong. 23 dead or crippled, more than half his force, lost to soft creatures with primitive weapons. The hunt had become a nightmare from which he could not wake. In the colony's deep tunnels, worked by candlelight. She was the colony's, a small woman with thick glasses and a mind that never stopped analyzing. For 3 days, she had been monitoring communications, learning their language, understanding their culture. "I found something," she told, "something important." They were gathered in what had become their command center, a wide cavern deep enough to be safe from immediate attack. Lay on a medical bed, his wounds bandaged by careful hands. He would live, but he would carry scars. Sat nearby, maintaining the explosive triggers that kept them from simply collapsing the tunnels. Had become shadow, carrying messages and watching the surface. "The don't hunt for food," explained, her tablet showing captured transmissions. "They hunt for status. Their entire civilization is built around something called the honor count. How many successful hunts you've completed, how many species you've conquered. A pack leader's power comes from his honor count." "So this is about pride," said from his bed. His voice was weak, but his mind was sharp. "More than pride, survival. A pack leader who fails a hunt loses everything. His hunters abandon him. His territory is taken. He becomes nothing. Looked at. Our pack leader can't retreat. If he returns home with a failed hunt, he's finished." Understood immediately. So he's trapped. He has to win or die trying. "Yes, and there's more." Pulled up another translation. "They have ritual combat, something called the true challenge. If prey kills enough hunters, it can demand single combat with the pack leader. If the prey wins, the hunt ends. The must leave." Silence fell over the cavern. Everyone understood what was suggesting, and everyone looked at. No, tried to sit up and failed. "Absolutely not. You can't fight that thing one-on-one. He's 8 feet tall, covered in armor with claws that could cut through steel." "She wouldn't have to win," said quietly. "She just has to not lose. Culture respects endurance. If she can survive long enough, force him to exhaust himself, the shame of failing to kill weak prey would be worse than losing the fight." "That's still suicide," said. "He's a professional killer, she's a surveyor." Had been quiet through the discussion, thinking. Now she spoke. "How do I issue the challenge?" I started. "How?" Checked her notes. "You have to stand before him openly, speak the formal words, something like, 'I claim the true challenge, one life against one life. By ancient law you must answer.' And he can't refuse." "No, refusing a true challenge from proven prey, and we've definitely proven ourselves, would destroy his honor as surely as losing the hunt. He has to accept." Nodded slowly. "Then that's what we do." The argument lasted for an hour. Threatened to physically restrain her. Offered to rig explosives that would kill the pack leader from a distance. Quietly checked injuries, counting wounds that hadn't properly healed, calculating how much damage her body had already taken. But was firm. "We can't win a war of attrition. We've hurt them badly, but they still have enough hunters to overwhelm us if they commit everything. More of our people will die, maybe all of us. This way, only I have to fight." "And if you lose?" asked. His voice was small, scared, young. "Then you keep fighting. You've learned enough, can lead, can build, can heal, you don't need me." She looked at each of them in turn. "But I don't plan to lose." She didn't explain how. She didn't have the words for it, but somewhere deep in her bones, she carried the knowledge of 100,000 years of human survival. Her ancestors had faced saber-toothed cats with wooden spears. They had faced mammoths with stone tools. They had faced every predator their world could produce and come out on top. They were just another predator, and humans knew how to deal with predators. At dawn, walked out onto the surface. They had established a perimeter around their ships, expecting the humans to stay underground. When their sensors detected a lone figure walking across the snow toward them, there was confusion. When they recognized who it was, there was anger. The pack leader emerged from his ship to face her. He was healing from their last encounter, fresh bandages visible on his shoulder and chest. But he moved with the easy grace of a predator who had never truly been challenged. "You return," he said through his translator. "Have you come to die properly?" Stopped 10 meters away. She was wearing a simple mining suit, no armor, no protection. In her hand was a mining pick, the same one she had used in the tunnels. Her body showed the damage of 4 days of constant fighting. She should have looked weak, broken, ready to fall. But she didn't. "I claim the true challenge," she said. Her voice was clear and steady in the cold air. "One life against one life. By your ancient law you must answer." The pack leader went still. Around him his hunters shifted nervously. They knew what this meant. They knew the law. "You cannot make this claim," he said. "You are prey. I've killed 8 of your hunters, crippled 12 more. By your own customs I've earned the right." Held his gaze without flinching. "Unless you're afraid of prey." That did it. The pack leader's pride couldn't allow the insult to stand, not in front of his remaining hunters. He straightened to his full height, towering over the small human woman. "I accept your challenge. When I kill you, your colony belongs to us. If you kill me, but when I beat you, your hunters leave this world forever, and you tell every you meet what happened here." He laughed. It was an ugly sound filled with arrogance. "Agreed. Tomorrow at sunrise, in the open ground between my ships, bring whatever weapons you can carry." "Tomorrow then." Turned and walked back toward the colony entrance. She could feel the eyes on her back, feel the pack leader's killing intent radiating toward her. But she didn't run. She didn't hurry. She walked at the same steady pace she had maintained through every moment of this nightmare. Patience, endurance, the human way. That night she sat alone in a small chamber near the surface, had bandaged her wounds one final time, had offered to modify her mining pick with an edge that could cut armor, had tried one last time to talk her out of it. But now she was alone, staring at the cold stone walls, thinking about tomorrow. Found her there an hour before dawn. He sat beside her without speaking, just keeping her company. After a long silence he asked, "Are you scared?" "Yes." "You don't look scared." "Being scared and looking scared are different things," smiled slightly. "Fear is useful, it keeps you sharp, but showing fear gives your enemy power over you." "How do you know you can beat him?" "I don't." She picked up her mining pick, felt its weight in her hands. "But humans have been beating bigger, stronger, faster things since we climbed down from the trees. We didn't do it by being better in a straight fight. We did it by being smarter, more patient, more determined, by refusing to give up even when everything said we should." She looked at with those calm, steady eyes. "My grandmother taught me to hunt in the mountains. We hunted boar, big, dangerous animals with tusks that could kill a man. She told me that the boar always thought it was the stronger one, and it was right. But strength isn't everything. Patience is, timing is, will is. And that's how you'll beat the pack leader." "That's how I'll try." Stood, testing her body, feeling where it hurt and where it was strong. "But if I fail, you remember what I taught you. Stay calm, stay patient, never stop fighting." Dawn came cold and gray, painting the ice world in shades of silver. The colonists gathered at the entrance to watch, unable to stay away even though had told them to keep safe. They needed to see. They needed to know. The pack leader waited in the open ground, magnificent and terrible. His hunters formed a circle around the fighting space, a wall of red eyes and sharp claws. The message was clear: no escape, no rescue, no help. Walked out to meet him, small and fragile and utterly human. The pack leader raised his clawed hands. Any last words, little prey? Gripped her mining pick. Her heart was racing, but her hands were steady. Fear and focus balanced perfectly. The human way of war. Just one, she said. I grew up hunting boar in the mountains. You're bigger than any boar I ever faced. She paused, and that terrible smile crossed her face one last time. But you're not smarter. The pack leader roared and charged. And the small human woman from a frozen mining colony went to war. The pack leader was fast, faster than anything had ever faced. His first strike came like lightning, claws cutting through the air where her head had been a heartbeat before. She felt the wind of his passing, felt her hair lift from the displaced air. But she wasn't there. She had moved before he struck, reading the tension in his shoulders, the shift in his weight. Humans had been reading predators for 100,000 years. The instincts were buried deep, but they never truly left. She rolled away, came up on her feet, and scored a light cut across his thigh as she passed. The wound was shallow, barely scratching the armor, but it was first blood. The watching hunters shifted uneasily. Lucky, the pack leader growled. Skill, corrected. You telegraph your strikes. Too confident, too used to prey that freezes. He attacked again, a combination of slashes that would have torn her apart if any had connected. But she was never where he expected. She ducked, weaved, slipped around his strikes like water flowing around stones. She didn't try to block. She was too small, too weak for that. She just made sure she wasn't there when his claws arrived. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. The boar charges. Always, it cannot help itself, so you make it charge where you want it to charge. Started moving with purpose, guiding the fight across the open ground. She led the pack leader toward patches of ice she had noted earlier, places where the surface was slick and treacherous. His clawed feet, designed for grip on rock and soil, struggled on the frozen surface. He stumbled just for a moment, but a moment was enough. Her mining pick found the joint behind his knee, driving deep into the gap between armor plates. He roared in pain and spun, catching her with a backhand strike that sent her flying across the ice. She hit the ground hard, tasted blood in her mouth, felt something crack in her ribs. Pain exploded through her body. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. For a long, terrible moment, she lay on the ice and wondered if this was where she died. Then she remembered lying wounded in the tunnels, still giving orders. Who had not slept in 4 days, keeping people alive through sheer will. And in all the others who were watching, hopping, believing in her. She stood up. The pack leader stared at her. His leg was bleeding freely now, the joint damaged. But he had expected her to stay down. He had expected the fight to be over. How, he demanded, how are you standing? Spat blood onto the ice. Humans don't quit, it's not in our nature. She attacked. Not a defensive move, not a careful strike. A wild, aggressive assault that caught him completely off guard. She drove the mining pick toward his face, forcing him to raise his arms to block. When he did, she dropped low and slammed her shoulder into his wounded leg. He went down. An 8-foot killing machine brought to his knees by a woman half his size. She didn't waste the advantage. She climbed onto his back, wrapped an arm around his throat and started squeezing. Her arm was too weak to crush his windpipe through the muscle, but she didn't need to crush it. She just needed to compress it, to make every breath a little harder, a little more painful. He thrashed and roared, trying to throw her off. His claws raked across her arms, her legs, opening wounds that bled freely. But she held on. She wrapped herself around him like a python, refusing to let go no matter how much damage she took. Get off me, he bellowed. Make me. Time passed. It might have been minutes. It might have been hours. The pack leader's struggles grew weaker as exhaustion and blood loss took their toll. His grip loosened as her own body failed, but she never let go completely. She was running on something deeper than strength now, deeper than training. She was running on the pure stubborn refusal to surrender that had carried humanity through ice ages and famines and wars without end. Finally, the pack leader collapsed. He lay on the bloody ice, chest heaving, unable to rise, released him and stumbled back, barely able to stand. Her arms were ribbons of torn flesh. Her ribs screamed with every breath. Her vision was going gray at the edges. But she was standing, and he was not. The hunters stood in silent shock. Their pack leader, the greatest hunter of his generation, had been beaten by a creature half his size with nothing but a mining pick and determination. Walked to stand over him. She raised her pick, the point aimed at his throat. One strike would end it, would avenge everyone that had killed across 17 star systems, would prove once and for all that humanity was not prey. She lowered the pick. "The challenge is over," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "You lost." The pack leader looked up at her with something she had never seen in eyes before. Not anger, not hatred, fear. "Why?" he asked. "Why not kill me?" Thought about the question, about all the colonists who had died, about the fear and pain of the last 4 days, about justice and vengeance and all the reasons she had to end his life. "Because I'm human," she finally said. "We're not like you. We fight to survive, not to destroy. Killing you wouldn't bring back our dead, it would just make us more like you." She turned away from him and faced the watching. They towered over her, dozens of apex predators who could tear her apart in seconds. She met their eyes one by one. "The hunt is over. By your own law, you must leave this world. But before you go, I want you to remember something. Remember what happened here. Remember that you came hunting prey and found something else." She paused, gathering the last of her strength. "Go back to your worlds. Tell your people about us. Tell them there's a species out here that climbed to the top of its food chain by never giving up. Tell them our name. Tell them about humans." Had emerged from the colony to translate, her voice steady despite her fear. They listened, and for the first time in their history, they heard something they never expected to hear from prey. A warning. The pack leader struggled to his feet with help from his hunters. He was broken, humiliated, finished in every way that mattered to his people. But he was alive, and he understood, finally, what had happened. "Human," he said, the word strange on his tongue, "we will remember you. Make sure you do." They returned to their ships. Within the hour, they lifted off and disappeared into the sky, leaving behind only scorched snow and memories. The colonists poured out of the tunnels, crying and laughing and embracing each other. Against all odds, they had survived. Collapsed before she reached the entrance. Caught her, lowered her gently to the ground, began working on her wounds with quick, expert hands. Limped out to kneel beside her, tears in his eyes, and stood guard, though there was nothing left to guard against. "Did we win?" asked. Her voice was fading, her eyes struggling to stay open. "We won," told her. "You won." "Good," she smiled, that same calm smile she had worn from the beginning. "I think I'll rest now." She closed her eyes. 3 weeks later, a rescue ship from Earth finally reached 442b. They found a colony that had survived against impossible odds, led by a woman who was still recovering from wounds that should have killed her. Had written down everything that happened. The full account would eventually reach Earth, reach the media, reach the galactic community. The story spread like fire across human space and beyond. On a dozen worlds, a new word entered the language. A word for prey that refused to be prey. A word for the species that had broken every rule of the hunt. The word, roughly translated, meant human. And in the halls of power, a warning was passed from elder to elder, a caution for future generations. Do not hunt the humans. They are not what they seem. They are the species that killed all their predators so long ago that they made up stories about them. They are the species that never stops, never surrenders, never accepts defeat. They look like prey, but inside them lives the oldest, most patient predator the universe has ever produced. Back on 442b, returned to her surveys. She walked the ice fields alone, mapping the land, finding peace in the quiet and cold. When asked how she stayed calm through the hunt, she would shrug and say nothing much. But sometimes, on clear nights, she would look up at the stars and wonder how many species out there thought they were the apex predators, wonder how many would eventually learn the truth. Humans were not prey, they never had been. They were simply very, very patient. And somewhere in the vastness of space, other species were beginning to learn what that meant. The hunt was over. But the lesson would last forever.